Death and resurrection is apparently his motif. He was declared dead some time back, but after 3 years. Yes, that 3. He is apparently risen. Mike Mbuvi Sonko puts the proverbial cat of 9 lives to shame by seemingly defying political death altogether. But we hear the new lease of life comes with terms and conditions that evoke memories of that 70% Western equation reported elsewhere. Caution, we speculate, or maybe gossip tonight. And by the way, what is your name? Or should I say, what is in a name? An identification parade took place in Nairobi Monday night, and Polycarp Igathe Kamau and Johnson Arthur Sakaja were positively identified as frontrunners for the seat of Governor of Nairobi. Now, once identified and named, they had a 90-minute argument. We'll tell you how it went. On the presidential campaign trail, President Kenyatta is back, and Deputy President Ruto is angry and unapologetic about it. On my take, the IEBC does not deserve that much anger from us. Come on, show them some love. And it is more love from Jamila's memo to all school principals and managers in these tough times. On the punchline, Gashuri punches more holes into the rejected party nominations list. And on Kai Kai's kicker, a reminder to Kenyans that we have an election and not a trip to heaven on the 9th of August. This is News Gang.
Kando na ile ambayo Bwana Chebukati anasema kwamba mwaka 2017 kama sijakosea kulikuwa na ile ruling ya Court of Appeal kwamba mtafuata hisha, lakini sheria yenyewe inasema kwamba lazima kuwe na ile complementary system ambayo ni manual. Lakini nyinyi tunaona mnajitoa pale mkisema kwamba mnataka kuondoa kudojiwa kwa namba, lakini tunajua pia upande wa elektroniki inaweza kuwa prompt manipulation. Unaweza kujitetea vipi pengine?
Kwanza nataka kusema kuwa sisi hatukatazi watu kutuelezea kuhusu hisia zao. Kama kuna watu wako na tashwishi kuhusu zile kits ambayo tutatumia ama mfumo ule tutatumia, ni mzuri akituelezea ndo tupate kuweza kuwaeleza utaratibu wake, waelewe kwa nini tunasema tufanye hivi na sivyo vile wanavyotaka. Kwa hivyo hatuna ubaya na wale ambao wanasema ya kuwa tunafikiria kuwa pengine kuwe na hii sajili ya manual. Na sisi hatujakataa kuwa kusiwe na sajili ya manual, lakini tunasema ya kuwa hiyo itakuwa ni kitu cha mwisho ambacho tutumie baada ya kuwa kama kutakuwa na failure technology, kama technology itakuwa haiwezi kufanya kazi. Na sheria ilisema kama vile chairman alisema kuwa tukizungumzia kuhusu complementary mechanism ni kwa sababu ukienda pale ukitaka ku-identify lazima utumie vidole vyako. Vidole vyako vinaweza kuwa si vizuri kwa sababu ya zile kazi unazofanya. Kwa hivyo kama itakuwa si vizuri, kuna njia nyingine mkabala ambao unaweza kutumia. Tutatumia kitambulisho chako, tutatumia namba zako, tutakuangalia na ile information yako tutaweza kuiona pale kwenye tukiiona basi tutakuruhusu upige kura. Lakini kama itaharibika kabisa ule mtambo, basi sisi tutaenda mwanzo tuko na backups kits ambao tunaweza kuzitumia pia, lakini pia kama tutaishiwa kabisa tutatumia hiyo sajili.
So, ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the program. So, IEBC had its first big, meeting with the media, and it was across all media houses. Alina's, a good thing because we've been seeking to hear a little bit more from the electoral management body.
Absolutely. It was a very good initiative and a very good idea that the IEBC finally faces the media, and in the manner it did. Because this was sort of a conference with a number of journalists who had to ask very, very good questions. And the topics they covered were really pertinent. All the questions that are being asked either by political stakeholders, including political parties and formations like Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, And also the general questions that are coming out there in the public, and a lot of other questions that have been coming up through the various aspirants for offices. And I think it was very, very comprehensive. The IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati, and his CEO, Marjan Hussein Marjan, did quite a lot of work in terms of just answering that question. And that is so, so good, coming as it did 26 days to the elections. But of course, there are questions that then followed the answers. And one of the main questions is the IEBC ready to run the August 9th election? The assurance from the chairman is, yes, we're ready, we're running this election, and we are prepared to do that. There were questions that were asked that are very, very pertinent about the state of the commission itself and the secretariat. Are they working as a team, or do they have differences, some of the differences that date as far back as 2017? And the assurance was, no, we are one team. We don't see why we should be seen as a divided unit. And then, of course, there was the question of, but how did it happen that ballot papers would arrive in the country in the course of this week, and not the entire commission knew about it. Some of them knew about it only the night before. And there was an answer there by the chairman that said, look, the commission is, the work is oversight and vision and strategy, and that the daily operations really are in the hands of the secretariat. So this was a very important forum, but I don't see it as an end, but it should be a start to conversations that the IEBC must regularly have to assure not just the political stakeholders in this coming election, but also ordinary Kenyans who have a lot of questions with regard to how the August 9 election will go.
Yeah. Even on the same issue, I was part of the production team for the debate.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah,
and as you said, it's a good first step, because complaints had risen, and we had also spoken about it on this forum, how it's really difficult to get anything out of the IEBC, even trying to get the commissioners to come for interviews, and it's really difficult. And we're not the only ones who are having that issue as Royal Media Services. Complaints had come from across other media houses, and the IEBC is really trying to be more open, be out there, answer questions, because there are a lot of questions. From the discussions we had yesterday, I'm sure if we had had more time, we would have continued for another hour or so, because the engagements were intense.
Yes.
They were fast-paced. There was no dull moment when we were there. And this, I think, is a first of many, because the Commission has promised that going forward, they'll have, I think, 3 press briefings during the week, if possible.
Okay.
And then now regularly be available to answer questions, respond. If you need any commissioners to come on shows, they're ready and willing to do so. That's one, Yvonne. And 2, the issues that came up. Because there are issues to do with trust and integrity and the electoral process itself that the anchors who were there, the journalists who were there, were asking questions about. And there are things that came up that we did not know. There were issues that were raised that actually raised more issues. We'll go into a bit more detail about them, especially the issues with the company that is printing the ballot papers, the Smartmatic, and the fact that issues were raised about their past performance in other countries and how the Commission CEO responded to that, raised more questions. But as Lena said, it was a good start. Number 2, the soundbite that we listened to by Mr. Marjan on manual versus electronic. It has been a big issue in the past few weeks with the two sides, main political sides, on different ends on this, with the Azimio side saying we have to have a manual register to complement the KIMS kits, and the Kenya Kwanza saying we are okay so long as you make sure that the KIMS kit works. But you know, the suspicion that comes up, even with Azimio and even with Kenyans, is what happened in previous elections. Like in 2017, those kits did fail. And there were some of the issues that came up during the 2017 ruling that nullified the presidential election. But then now, ultimately, you heard what the CEO said. We will eventually have it. I don't know why, in my opinion, I keep thinking maybe they're just testing the waters and said, let's say we don't have a manual register, so what will it be? Did it need to take Azimio going to court, raising all those issues, the whole hullabaloo about it, for them to say, okay, we'll have it? That was one among several issues that came up, Yvonne, yesterday.
Yeah, and let's get into some of those. And one of the ones that you mentioned is on the issue of Smartmatic, that is providing, electronic transmission on that. And I'd like us to, before we get into that a bit, listen to what the IEBC had to say on Smartmatics and that organization, and indeed some of the issues that had been raised that were brought up by one of the journalists at that media roundtable. Let's listen.
No, that the cybercrime investigation and the coordinating center, CICC, in the Philippines after the 2016 elections called on this Smartmatics. It compromised the elections which led to the election of President Rodrigo Duterte. Did you know that in Uganda, the biometric voter kits failed, forcing the election officials to revert to the manual voter system? Did you know that in Venezuela, in Latin America in 2017, Smartmatic on its own acknowledged that the turnout voter figures were manipulated by at least 1 million voters? Did you establish this before you awarded the contract?
No, because I rely on the evaluation committee after they do the due diligence and they provide me with the report. That is what I rely on. And therefore, these other news about that you are providing now are things that I was not even aware about.
So the report you awarded never cited these issues?
These issues were never cited.
But this is a company that is seriously indicted by a cybercrime agency of a country.
This, I think, it would require the company to respond, because I don't have a...
But you're already in agreement with them?
Yes, it's because this information did not even come to our attention. You are actually saying that, and it's not even confirmed. This probably will be based on information that you've been able to search, maybe from the internet and the rest. And I think it would be proper at this particular time if this question can be actually directed to the respective company for them. No. I cannot speak on their behalf.
So that was an interesting response, Gashuri.
Yeah, you see, trust issues are as a result of maybe inability to answer comprehensively, conclusively, some questions. And you see, trust is not a commodity. It is something that you get over a period of time. It's a process. And it's not something that you will have today and not have tomorrow. It's about consistency. Consistency in how you respond to questions, how you deal with situations as they arise. It is not the responsibility of Kenyan voters to go and ask Smartmatic, who are you, what are you doing, and so on and so forth.
There have been issues in your past.
There have been issues in the past, and so on and so forth. It is the responsibility of the body that has contracted that company, that organization, to perform a certain role in this electoral process, to tell us that this team that we have identified to deal with the voter identification process electronically is a comprehensive team, is a good team, is a good organization, has a good track record. It is the referee, it is the person who procured their services who is supposed to tell us, by the way, we can vouch for their services. I mean, it is not the responsibility of 22.1 million registered voters to keep calling Smartmatic and ask them, who are you, how do you perform, and so on and so forth. It is also the responsibility of us in the media and other stakeholders in the electoral process to ask IEBC, are you sure about this person that you have given this business or this job to do 1, 2, 3? The responsibility ends there. So because Smartmatic is not the only organization across the world that offers a technological platform to identify voters and do other activities that are related to the electronic aspect of the election. That is voter identification and transmission of results. Because all the other processes are manual. Voting is manual, counting is manual. So it is for IEBC to do that job, because I would assume that there would have been various applicants. So how did you arrive at this one? Why this one and not this one? If there are questions that have been raised about their track record, it is for you to tell us, yes, we looked at those questions emerged, but based on 1, 2, 3 factors, we settled on this team and not this other team, so rest assured that they will perform. In any case, they're not doing that job for free. They're doing that job at a cost, and that cost is covered by the taxpayers' money. So the taxes that you pay when you know, from your salary, from the commodities that you buy, that is the money that will be used to pay that organization to perform a certain role in this electoral process. So I would think, I was not convinced by that answer, and I thought there ought to have been a better answer. Let me put it this way. Trust issues are as a result of, one, inconsistencies, and two, inability to tell us that that which was raised in 2017, we have dealt with it. Itemize it. There was a question that was raised on this. This is the solution we have identified. There was an anomaly in this. This is how we have resolved it. The Supreme Court raised this particular question. This is the response we have for it. That is how to grow trust and confidence in an electoral process. When you tell us to go and ask that organization, I was not convinced by that answer.
Okay, let me quickly get on to another matter that IEBC is currently dealing with, and that is on the issue of Mike Mbuvi Sonko. So, you know, let's just talk about the fact that the returning officer in Mombasa today has, you know, issued him with a certificate and is able to, a clearance certificate. And I think there was every indication that this was going to happen, especially when the IEBC chair yesterday spoke on Sonko's case. I'd like us to listen to what he had to say about that, and then we can then get into this discussion. So this was what they said on this matter yesterday that then set the chain of events that we've seen today. Listen.
A High Court decision can be challenged at the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
Will you?
Yeah. In terms of the matter of Sonko,
yes.
Let me put it this way. 26 days to election. We must finish printing ballot papers. Actually, we are even late in making changes to the ballot papers. So in most of these cases where we are, we don't have time to take another action. I have not read the judgment. I believe the team will read the judgment. But as a commission, we would want to finalize this process so that we can give Kenyans a credible election on the 9th of August. We cannot have a situation where we want to then to say we are not ready for that particular elective position. But so we shall implement the judgment, and then if there are any other issues on the impeachment area, I'm sure they'll be cleared as we go along.
So, I mean, there it is, back to life, at least politically, when it comes to Mike Mbuvi. Sonko wants to run for governor of Nairobi County. For me, though, two things, gang. So, number one is that the Supreme Court is yet to give, its final decision, which we understand is on notice, but,
yes.
Could be tomorrow.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the notice is now tomorrow. So, there's still that hurdle. But I think, Alina, the thing for me it raises is then the question of impeachment. So with all of these things that have happened, particularly around Sonko's case, what does that say about the process of impeachment, which in essence we know the grounds for impeachment: gross misconduct, abuse of office, gross violation of the Constitution of Kenya, and amongst those issues where it says, I mean, impeachment is technically one being not fit for office. And so once that is pronounced to that matter, and without going to adjudicate into the matter of impeachment, but one would start to question that whole elaborate process that goes through the county assemblies and then all the way to the Senate before it is ratified. And then here we are with a candidate who's gone through that entire process and is now, on the ballot for now, at least, until the Supreme Court tells us one way or the other. But it does raise issues about that process and what it means.
One little technicality made the entire difference, and the judges did not really need to do any more except make the decision the way they did. And that was the principle that you have to have exhausted all the appeal mechanisms. But you see, the issue that is coming up tomorrow in the Supreme Court was still pending. The Supreme Court is yet to pronounce itself on the question of Mike Sonko's impeachment. He has appealed, and now a judgment is due from the Supreme Court tomorrow. That is what did it for Mike Sonko, because once that is pending, then the judges were left with no option but to say, no, he hasn't cleared his appeal process in its entirety, and so it is unfair to exclude him from the list of candidates for this election. Yeah, so and the Supreme Court will now give finality on this matter. Absolutely. So for tonight, I think Mike Sonko is hoping that the Supreme Court will say, we find no problem with we'll agree with him, the appeal, and basically let him stay on the ballot.
I mean,
but again, if it rules the other way, everything again crashes back to zero.
Doesn't it, in this back and forth?
It's interesting because I was looking at our tag there. It's Sonko is reason.
Yeah.
This is the same Mike Sonko whose political career was almost dead and buried. He was in bad books with the president, with the Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga. He had court cases. He's the same guy alibebwa juju. Alikuwa wapi somewhere huko boy.
Right.
Akabebwa, akapigwa pingu. He was fighting. You know, things were really, really bad for Sonko. And we thought, well, it's over. And he didn't
beat somebody.
Yeah.
With his teeth. Yeah.
Oh,
yes. By the way, he did.
The regional police commander.
Yes, that's right. During that arrest.
Yes. It was a scuffle and a half.
Yeah.
And he was arrested. Na akabebwa juju kusabia kesi hapa na pale.
Yeah.
The gentleman has been in court for everything from corruption cases to try and clear his name, to try and get on the ballot. And now it seems like he's back in everyone's good books.
Yeah.
Remember, he was with the president recently in Embakasi South.
I think that was the first signal that,
and he spoke very well and he supported the president's initiative in Nairobi. He even supported Nemes and said, if you want Nemes to continue, you need to elect Azimio. He even campaigned for Polycarp Igathe, the candidate running on a Jubilee ticket, saying that Mumpatieni Kura, the same Polycarp Igathe who used to be his deputy and who resigned, I think, a few months.
Saying he couldn't work with him.
Work with him. I mean, hey, political friendship in this country is amazing. But yeah, that's it. There was a picture of him and Raila Odinga also akisalimiana mkono. Mambo yake ni mazuri. And now if he's cleared, if tomorrow the Supreme Court decides the guy, he can run for Mombasa governor, well, he will run. And you may even have him, I don't know how people in Mombasa will elect, will vote if they vote him in.
Yeah.
I think it will be totally, for me, almost amazing, not in a good way, because if you're impeached in one county over all those issues that you brought up, like you're unfit to hold public office, but you are able to go and run in a different county. I mean, hey, this is the same country.
Yeah.
But then now that's Mike Sonko for you, and that's politics for you. The guy has survived, really. Amelea, float, he's back up, and you see, Allah, he's relevant once again.
And indeed, you're right. And we'll see what the Supreme Court says, which could throw a huge tailspin on what impeachment means. And we'll, of course, want to hear their reasoned judgment on maybe the process by which he was impeached. I'm sure they'll get into that, which will no doubt be interesting for, the next administration, the next set of governors, and of course the next parliament and county assemblies that come into play. But all of that aside, and Jamila's brought in, the issue of the man Sonko, who I dare say the person responsible for his resurrection would be Kalonzo Musyoka, who then, had him as a nominee, on a wiper ticket. And just going off of what Jamila has said, boy, has he had quite the ride politically. I mean, he was signing a deed of transfer, and then he said, maybe he was intoxicated at the time by the very person he accused of doing that. Now, they're together. What's his term as governor been like? Just take us through that journey, Francis.
Simple. It's because politics is not a straight line.
Clearly, it's not
a straight
especially
line.
in Sonko's case.
If you look at it, if you look at politics from a straight line point of view, you are likely to miss very many things, because the ideal and the real are worlds apart, and that's why somebody like Sonko, who was seen as dead and buried politically, has reason, because there's something he brings into the political scene that is required in an electoral setup like we are in.
What's that he brings?
You see, one, it is the ability to mobilize. And granted, if he decides to vie, for example, in Kiambu, my home county, or he decides to vie in Kisumu, or he decides to vie in Isiolo County, you're likely to see a certain reaction. There's a way he conducts his campaign that is, that endears him to people generally. And his decision to move to Mombasa, I would think, was strategic in one way or another. And even the reason why he would be cleared or not cleared also has a political, strategy to it, so to say. And I think it has something to do with mobilization. And look, this is a very closely contested election, be it at the presidential level, be it at the gubernatorial level. So you want in some scenarios where a person has the ability to mobilize the numbers for you. So maybe I would think, this is my random thought, that probably it has something to do with the presidential vote ultimately, particularly in a county like Mombasa, and even maybe in a county like Nairobi. So there is something that he brings to the political table that probably is being worked on around. So, but still you have to contend with the Supreme Court decision tomorrow. Yeah. Why? Because, you see, I think it is important to distinguish the cases that Sonko was facing. Yeah. The Supreme Court is making a decision with finality on the impeachment process. Yes. Was he impeached in the correct way? Yep. Yes or no? If the Supreme Court judges say he was impeached in the correct way, then that will put it at the end, you know, basically at the very end, it will be difficult for him to vie again. And it will take him back to square one, because much as he was handed a certificate today by the county returning officer, if the Supreme Court tomorrow rules that he was impeached correctly, then that certificate will be withdrawn, basically. And we've seen scenarios where people have been given certificates by IEBC and withdrawn. Yeah. Do I say Nyambane? Anyway, I didn't say that. But on the other hand, if the Supreme Court says he wasn't impeached in the correct way, then it's a clear for him. But also it sets the stage for future impeachment. Exactly. If somebody will be impeached, then the Supreme Court will give us a pathway, a precedent, a pathway. This is how you impeach a governor. Yeah. Because this is how not to. This is how to, and this is how not to. Correct. So I think tomorrow's decision, if it is made, will be very, very important insofar as the question of impeachment is concerned. Lena? But at the same time, it is important to point that in the event that he is allowed to contest in the Mombasa gubernatorial race, expect a very intense contest. And maybe it will be a disadvantage to Abdul Samad. Yeah,
Yvonne, that's how they work that comes in, something Gashuri said about Sonko himself. He is a populist. He's the kind of guy who kukiwa na moto, ameenda amepeleka mabati na blanketi. Kama kuna mazishi, he's one who will give a vehicle, he'll give money to the bereaved family to buy a coffin, transport the body home. He's the one who will go to Mama Mbogas there and help them kama kumenyesha, mabati yamevunjika and all that. Remember, he was given over 800,000 votes by Nairobians when he was elected. And sio wananchi ambao walimuondoa walimimpeach, ni hizo processes za MCAs, kisha Senate na wakamuondoa. So he has a certain appeal to the people, he appeals to the masses. And we were jokingly today saying that even if Sonko goes to Western Kenya and decides to run for a seat there, chances are he may win, because he's the kind of leader who appeals to people. He's a rabble rouser, but people look at him and see like intentions zake si mbaya. All those cases around him notwithstanding. But as you said, akiruhusiwa kuran Mombasa, that will be one very, very interesting race. Very,
that's right. Linus?
I mean, however popular and good and mobilized the one is, I think there are still the requirements that one has to meet to run for office. And I think there is an optics issue that is going on right here, starting with the fact that he made this very public appearance the other day with President Kenyatta, and then a day after that there is the court says rules in his favor. Rules in his favor. And then what this does, of course, is to put everything, and Kenyans are very good at this, just tying one thing to the other, so much so that tomorrow's decision will be also seen from a political angle. There is the basic, for example, interpretation that, he's now in good books of President Kenyatta, he's now in good books of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. So it should be natural that this yoke of impeachment will be thrown away by the Supreme Court tomorrow, which again puts the court in an awkward position. Tonight, as the judges await to make their decision, they'll already be under this psychological pressure that there is so much political optics going on that whichever way they'll go, the decision will be interpreted politically. There is another question that, of course, we expect that the Supreme Court can help guide in a small way, and that is the pending question of what are the requirements for one to run for office. And of course, we know that there is another matter that is in the court process in the manner of the Johnson Sakaja degree issue, that will then, of course, also be going to determine further down the line. I don't know how long it will take, what academic credentials one is required to have in order to run for governor, because look, the one thing that has happened when all these candidates that were initially stopped and then they suddenly somehow find their way back to the ballot papers, what it's been doing is basically trashing whatever structure there is that the IEBC calls a requirements criteria for candidates to run for office. Because you say Thangwa, and then in a short while he's actually back.
Yes.
Sonko is technically back until tomorrow when the Supreme Court makes its decision. And what this is saying, it's not a very good statement about our so-called election criteria when it comes to what do people need in order to run for office, because now it's becoming a bit of as useless as sending invitation cards to a street festival.
Even worse, Linus, the chapter on leadership and integrity, chapter 6 of the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution then expected that there will be a minimum requirement in terms of who should run for a public office and who should not run for a public office. And what is integrity? What is the definition of integrity? Unfortunately, when the bill that was supposed to enable the implementation of that article in the Constitution was taken to Parliament, it was diluted, mutilated continuously, such that even the very framework does not look like how the implementation process looks like. So I think the threshold that was set, the requirements that were set for leadership and integrity were totally watered down. In any case now, anyone can run. Put plain and simple, anyone can run for any elective seat, as long as you're able to convince those who are handling the process that you deserve. Otherwise, it is not subject to the guidelines that were supposed to be there. In any case, when EACC gave us a list of 241, only 4 were to be disqualified. But even then, they're back. So there was no need of even coming up with that list. Because in any case, put it this way, it's a street festival, as you call it. Anyone can.
Yeah, and those are the issues that will be raised around leadership and integrity and what that is. And, you know, Chebukati in that interview yesterday also blamed, you know, sort of the weak laws around it. And that leaves them with not too many options in terms of that. So I think, you know, the two cases of Sonko and Sakaja will determine a lot going forward in our, you know, subsequent elections, 2027 and thereafter. And it is, in fact, from there that we will come back. Now that we're talking about Sakaja, he and Igade, you know, were at it for a full 90 minutes. When we come back, we'll get into that.